Here with my colleague Christabel Pinto of Room to Read, and we'll be hearing a presentation today by Mr. Musharraf Tanzin. Mr. Tanzin is an INEE focal point for Bangladesh. He has 20 years plus of work experience in the field of education, including education in emergencies, early childhood development, and early grade reading and literacy. He's been working on programs at the grassroots level, working with disadvantaged groups and contributing to policy reforms at national levels. He has a master's degree in education from Dhaka University, and has been working in early grade reading and literacy in various formal and crisis and emergency affected contexts. Mr. Tanzin is going to present on the history of Bangla nonfiction children's books and major trends, including the major trends, opportunities, and challenges. And this covers both the NGO and commercial type publishers. So let's get started. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Melly, for the introduction. Shall I start?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all, and I would like to welcome you all to my presentation on Bangla nonfiction's children's books and its history and major trends. Particularly, I'll go through the early history and the middle history of the children's book publication or production of Bangla language. And recently I have conducted a desk study on the major trends to identify the major trends of nonfiction children's books in Bangla. So my presentation will be divided into two parts. The first part will be focusing on the history. We will journey together throughout the Bangla nonfiction children's books history, as well as the second part will be focusing on the current major trends of nonfiction children's books in Bangladesh. So let me start. Particularly, the outline of the history it will be look like this. There is an oral tradition phase of Bangla language and Bangla literature. So I'll focus on that for a while, and then I'll go through the British colonial era, which starts in 1800 and sustained until 1947. And it has also three major phases. Beginning phase, which was from 1800 to 1880, and there was a development or growth phase, which is 1884 to 1918, and diversification phase from 1920 to 1947. And most of you may know that after getting independence from the British colonial era, Bangladesh or East Bengal was part of the Pakistan as the name of East Pakistan, and it was under Pakistan rule from 1947 to 1971. At that time was also some development of children's books, particularly the non-fiction children's books, were happened. So we will also here see the beginning phase from 1947 to 1955, development and growth phase in 1956 to 1960, and diversification phase from 1961 to 1970 or 71. 71 should not be counted because from March 26 to 16th December, the whole period was involved in independence war. So there was no regular work or activities at that time. And from 16th December 1971, Bangladesh became independent. So we will also see the major trends of children's literature or children's books from 1972 to current time. And particularly in the second phase of second part of my presentation, we will see the current major trends of the non-fiction children's books in Bangladesh. That would be the outline of the history. And I must start with the beginning of the language. Bangla is an Indo-Aryan language, which was mainly formed from 800 to 1000 AD. And you may know that until 1200 AD, Bangla or Bengal, which is the eastern part of India, was ruled by local kings or Indian kings. But in the beginning of 13th century, Muslims were coming, Turkish were coming, Persians were coming, Mughals were coming. So in different times, Bengal or Bangladesh of today's time was ruled by different rulers. But in society, there was oral tradition of tradition of literature. So as part of the literature, there were also some children's literature as well, like rhymes, folk tales, lullabies, ethical stories, fairy tales, ballads, myths, biography of prophets. I already have mentioned that after 12th century, Muslims were coming, so they were bringing with them with the stories or life biographies of different prophets as well. And Alif Laila, you may aware about that famous story of Alif Laila from the Middle East, and Persian stories, Shahnama, Shorab Rustom, all those things were coming to Bengal or Bangla, and these things were used to amuse children in Bangladesh. Particularly, I'm going to tell you the history or stories about this part of India. You may see the orange part of the map, as well as adjacent ash colored lands of the map. So the ash color lands is mainly West Bengal, which is currently part of India after 1947, and the orange or reddish color of the land is current Bangladesh. So up to 1947, I'll focus on the whole part, and after 1947, I'll focus on only the reddish color or orange color land. So in the British colonial era, you may know that in 1957, Bangladesh or the whole Bengal was being ruled until 1757. It was being ruled by the last independent Nawab or the king, Siraj-ud-Dawla. He was defeated by the East India Company force. There was a force which was led by British East India Company. So they defeated him and took the this part under their rule. Since then, a lot of historical events were gone, and consequently they were capturing the whole India, whole part of the Indian lands, and along with other activities like business and others, they were also doing some good things for the colony. One of them is in 1800, British, when British has took over the land, they established a college called Fort William College. Particularly, this college was run by the missionaries, Sri Rampur missionaries, and the first children's book, which was titled Hitopodesh, means well-being advice. So this was published in 1802 by the Sri Rampur missionaries, and in 1817, Hindu College was established. Previously, Fort William College was there, established in 1800, and then in 1817, Hindu College was established to attract the students of the Hindu community to cater education. And Calcutta Book Society was formed for suggesting developing books, textbooks for the Hindu college students. And later on, within this time, Calcutta School Book Society was also established, who was responsible for the selecting, writing books for the schools of that time. And they were also going beyond the textbook. They were also publishing some literature or children's books, which was mainly the translation of European books or American books, or some sort of adaptation or retelling the stories or the information. There was a serious lack of original books at that time. From 18 to 1829, we will find that there is no original books. But at that time, one thing was very much prominent, that is science. Missionaries were translating or adapting some science books, and they were also publishing some series of science journals or science magazines at that time. In 1815, first science book was published by Pearson, one of these Sri Rampur Baptist missionaries, and Sri Rampur Baptist Mission Press was the publisher of that book on geography and astronomy. Father Felix Carey published a collection of translated essays on science in 1818. In 1819, Reverend May published a collection of essays on mathematics, science, mathematics, astronomy, geography, all those things were then uh, being flourished. 1822, uh, a series of science books on animals were published by W.H. Pierce, and Calcutta School Book Society was the publisher of those series. And it was stopped in 1822. Second time, a second series of books on animals were published by a Bengali uh, person, uh, Ramchandra Mitra, in 1833. And the same person, Ramchandra Mitra, made another publication on the birds or in ornithology in 1844. By this time, Ramchandra Vidyabagish, another person, he uh, published another non-fiction book, Niti Darshan, means ethical stories or ethical talks. And in 1850, there was a tremendous initiative because it was published 9 famous ladies' biography in the name of Nabo Nari. Nabo means 9, Nari means women. So Nabo Nari, it was a really innovative thinking of that time. And another part of the non-fictions, I am totally concentrating on the non-fictions, not on the fictions. So another strand of non-fictions was the magazines. The whole Bengal or the whole British East India or British East India saw its first Bangla newspaper in 1818, and consequently Ramchandra Mitra published one magazine, Gyanodoy, and later on some of the magazines with children's writing or for the or targeting the children was published in 1878, 1885, 1903, 1917, 1929. These are Balok Bundhu, Shakha, Parboni, Balok, Mukul, Shishu Barshiki. Shishu Barshiki was published annually, and in 1903, one magazine was initiated by the A.K. Fazlul Haq, Abul Qasim Fazlul Haq. You may know that he later on he was the chief minister of undivided Bengal, and the important thing is that, which I showed you in the map, all the initiatives were happening in the gray areas or ash areas. But Sher Bangla A.K. Fazlul Haq was the first person who published a journal or magazine from the red areas or orange areas beyond the Calcutta society. And in 1929, from again from the uh, East Bengal part, a magazine was published with the children's writing. Children were writing for that journal or magazine. And throughout the phase, if we examine the contents of those non-fiction children's books, we'll find that nationalism, tradition, heritage, history, myth, biography. Biography took the half of the nonfiction books amount, and the other half was consisting of politics, economics, health, sports, travel, music, religion, paintings, even encyclopedia. And in the later stage, they started to translate not only from the European, they are also translating from the American books, and also Russian, French, Persian stories and adventures were being translated in Bangla at that time. So now let's come into the Pakistan era, which was started in 1947, and uh, from 1947, Bangladesh was becoming the part of Pakistan in the name of East Pakistan. In Pakistan era, we will find that in from 1947 to 1955, there was a serious uh, dearth of publishing the children's books. Only 150, around 150 children's books were published in between 8 years. So the non-fiction books, if we examine, the major trends were biography, and all the biographies were from the Muslim communities, the persons of Muslim communities, that the Prophet's biography, or the Muslim scholars like Ibn Sina, Ibn Khaldun, all of them, all of their biographies were then published in this part of the Bengal. And only 3 books on science was found at that time. If we think about the children's magazine, we will find 2 or 3 in between 1947 to 55. And there was a growth period or development period, very limited time though, from 1956 to 60. At that time, the children's books were starting to publish more in much more numbers, and accordingly, the non-fiction children's books were also publishing. So it also again were constituted by with biography, history, science, travelogue, transportation, and museum. Museum was the new element or description of transportation of that time, where new elements which was included in that time. And in the diversification phase of the Pakistan era, it was 1961 to 1971, we find that there were some experimentation at that time on subject, selecting subject for writing non-fictions, or writing style, language style that were being used to reach out children, and also the content. Among the subject, the topics or contents were being chosen by the writers with some sort of experimentation. And at that time, we will find that the biographies were diversified. Not only the Muslim scholars or Muslim persons were persons' biographies were included. Beyond that, they were testing, they were trying. And children's magazine, I already have mentioned in the beginning period of Pakistan era, it was only 2, 3, but in the diversification era, it was found 16, and among them 3 were science magazines. Another thing is another important event is that not all the magazines were published from Dhaka, the provincial um, capital of East Pakistan. They were also being published from outside Dhaka, like Chittagong. They were publishing Taput Tupur in 1964, Shobuj Pata, Surjomukhi, Meghomallar. And another thing is that the government took initiative to publish a child magazine, which is called Nabarun. It means new sun. So I already mentioned that in the biographies, all the persons or persons are included from outside the country and outside the religion, which is it was a milestone of that era. And in 1971, the Independence War was started in March, and it was continued until 16th December. On 16th December, we got liberated, and from 1972 to 1974, if we think of that time, we will find that only less than 20 books were published throughout the 3 years or 4 years. But after 1975, the publishing industry was blooming, particularly 4 publishers like Bangla Academy. It's a government publishing house, and Muktadhara, and another one was Ahmad Publishing. They were taking the leads in the publishing industry. And we will find that the social consciousness, patriotism, obviously patriotism was one of the main content or topic of that time, because we just have liberated through bloodshed. So that was one of the major trend or major portion of the books were written on that topic, that content. Animals, birds, forest, biology, even geology, botany, agriculture, language, literature, history, economics, liberation war, biography. Biography was not that much were exercised at that time. Only I found the national poet Kazi Nazrul Islam and the Nobel laureate Bengali poet Rabindranath Tagore. These 2 persons' biographies were published by different publishers, and at that time Bangla Academy started to publish one magazine for children like Dhan Shaliket Desh, And by this time, Bangladesh Children's Academy was established, which is called Bangladesh Shishu Academy. Shishu means child or children. So they have started to publish two magazines, Nabarun and Shishu. Nabarun was also established in the Pakistan era, but it was continued by Shishu Academy. And after 1975, we can see a steady progress until 1990. 1980 to 90, we will find a lot of experimentation on language, style of presentation, contents, and all these contents are politically aware. We will find that the writers are writing in a political way. They are trying to create the environmental awareness among the children, social awareness. They are telling us travel stories. They are also telling us the language movement, uh, history of language movement, history of our liberation war, and history of British India was also part of that publishing industry. And also they were publishing books on archaeology, sports. They were publishing jokes even for children, and also science, diversity of art, like different forms of the art, like desert, forest, ocean, history of some other countries like India, SAARC countries like Bhutan, Nepal. And again, the biography part was very minimal at that time. But the biography was flourishing again in Bangla literature after the 1990s. And we had to wait for the first biography of our father of nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, until 1983. And his first biography for children was published in 1983. Later on, when the current government came to the power, it was flourishing. From 2010 to 2020, a lot of publishers are publishing biography of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman in different forms. So that's the historical perspective or history I already have mentioned in the beginning, that my first part of the history of non-fiction children's books in Bangladesh. Now I'll show you some recent trends. Recently, I have conducted a desk-based study. I have collected uh, catalogs from 134 publishers, commercial publishers of Bangladesh, and from them I examined 57 commercial publishers catalog, and I also collected catalogs from the two government institutions. One is Bangla Academy, another one is Bangladesh Shishu Academy, which is Bangladesh Children's Academy. And also I collected catalogs from 4 NGOs, 3 are nationals and 1 is international. 3 nationals are Dhaka Hassaniya Mission, BRAC, you may know the name of BRAC, and another one is FIVDB. All 3 organizations have been involved in promotion of literacy initiatives in Bangladesh since 1971 or 72. And Room to Read is an international organization. So what I have found from this desk-based study is that overall 20% or 20.5% books are uh, um, for the children, meant for children from the whole publishing industry or the whole book publishing industry. Among them, government institutes have 19.8%. On the later stage, we will examine more on it. And NGOs have 55.3% of children's books. So if we think in that way, NGOs are publishing more children's book than the other publishers. And commercial publishers, they are publishing only 19% of children's books of the whole of their publications. I already have mentioned Bangla Academy and Bangladesh Shishu Academy, both are the government organization. Bangla Academy is mainly publishing the books for academia, books for students of the secondary, tertiary level or university level, and the general people, adult people. So they have a minimal percentage of 1.6 for the children's books. On the other hand, Bangladesh Children's Council, Children's Academy or Shishu Academy, they are publishing books only for the children. Their 100% books are for children. Now we can see the proportion of the fiction and non-fiction. Overall, I found that 20% books that are published for children are non-fiction, and at least 80% books are fiction. It's the total amount of children's books. So among the total children's books, 80% are fictions and only 20% are non-fiction as identified. In the NGO level, or NGOs have 78% are non-fiction fictions and only 21% non-fiction books for the children. And also government level, government institutions level, we will find that the non-fiction, the percentage of non-fiction books are a bit higher. They are publishing almost 31% of children's books, which are non-fiction, and 69% books are fictions. But the commercial publishers, they have the proportion of non-fiction only less than 19%, and fiction constitutes 81% of their whole publication. So if we think about the challenges, the major trends of the non-fictions, again we will find from this current phase, biography is constituting the major portion of the non-fictions. The biography of father of the nation, national poet, prophet, scientist, poets, famous personalities, their biographies are included here. The second major trend is science. It's included computer, internet, solar system, project works, innovations, endangered animals, etc. And nature of the country, flowers, birds, trees, rivers, fishes, animals, environment, and also the largest mangrove forest, Sundarban. And history. History is mainly liberation war and language movement. And also some of the publishers are publishing on some books on civilizations, national symbols, and another major portion is constituted by general knowledge books, which is uh, gearing up children with different types of general knowledge. So I think these are the major trends which in which we have to have the opportunity to work on to diversify the trends of contents, subjects of the non-fiction books of Bangla or Bangladesh. Now we can talk about some challenges and opportunities briefly. I think uh, all the books that are published are not uh, with the quality, not the quality of uh, getting attraction of the children. So I think there is a challenge of ensuring quality, and to ensure the quality of those books, we can, we means it may be NGOs, it may be government, or it may be the commercial publishers. We have some opportunities to work on, like introducing the techniques of writing non-fictions or informational text. The writers who have been involved in writing the non-fiction books or texts, they are not aware about the writing techniques of non-fictions or informational text. They are writing traditionally. Another thing is diversification of non-fiction books. We have found a very few major trends. I think we can try for diversification, and also increasing the percentage of non-fiction or informational text. We have found that only 20% books are non-fictions among the whole publishing industry. So we can have a uh, try for increasing the numbers, increasing the proportion of the non-fiction books. And there is no review committee of those children's books. So we can maintain, we can introduce and maintain a book review committee to review new drafts or provide feedback to the publishers and writers as well. And also we can offer a training and ongoing mentoring to the publishing industry and its parties. Parties means authors, publishers, distributors. You will be you may not know that in Bangladesh there is no distribution companies. Very recently, distribution book distribution companies are going to established, but I think distribution can be a, an important part of this publishing industry. We can support to the establishment of communities of practice for each of the constituent parties of this industry. And also we can develop and share the quality guidance to evaluate the age appropriateness, cultural appropriateness of writings and illustration of those books, writings, and the published illustrations. So I think that's all from my side. Thank you all for listening to me for a long time, longer session. Thank you all.
Well, that was fantastic. It's great to see such a carefully researched history in a particular context and country. I've seen some of that in pieces from the United States, but this may be the first time that I'm seeing something so carefully and robustly studied for a particular country. So um, it's extremely interesting, and I think it lends a lot to our sort of thinking in relation to what we can do going forward, um, to advocate and support nonfiction book creation. I'd like to open up the floor to questions.
Is there any question?
You've given us so much to think about, Tanzan, that our brains are still processing all of this really valuable information. So thank you so much for your presentation. It's so interesting to see how the trends in literature and children's literature in particular are linked with what's happening in the country context at the particular moments in time.
Yeah, particularly while I was looking into the history of children's books in this part of the globe, like Bangladesh or East Bengal, even undivided Bengal, I was really amazed to see the first children's book which was published in 1802. It was a mixture of fiction and non-fiction, like giving the advices for well-being in, in disguise of stories. So that was really amazing for me when I was trying to get into the information regarding the non-fictions particularly. So, and it was also interesting to me that uh, we have a rich history even in the colonial period. Even in the British colonial period, we have had a rich history of children's books. If we go to compare between the British period, Pakistan period, and the current Bangladesh period, I must say they were much more forward thinking at that time on the children's book, and particularly the non-fiction children's book. They were introducing science books before biographies, but in the latest stage, biography took a major portion of the non-fictions. So I was really amazed by seeing their forward thinking at that time as well.
That's a great observation. I was curious whether you think some of the nonfiction that you looked at was more demand driven, or do you think it was more the writers and publishers that came up with ideas for those books?
Uh, in the current stage,
Sure,
Emilia?
sure.
Yeah, in the current days, particularly if I think about the Bangladesh era, we will find that the writers are coming with their ideas, or publishers are coming up with their ideas. There was no formative research, or there was no demands, or the at least not identified demand over there for publishing these non-fictions. So I think we can also have get the opportunity to identify what sort of non-fiction or informational text children would love. Because yes, if when I was conducting the study, I also found that some of the publishers are publishing books, children's books on uh, decoration, like uh, uh, interior decoration, or some of the publishers are publishing on computers, computing, cloud computing, or such kind of things. But I think they didn't have any research on it, research on the demand of those contents. Rather, they are pushing their thoughts. So I think it can be another option to research on the demand of the text, informational text from the children or children's parents even.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we're coming up against time. I did want to make sure that anybody who might have questions has the opportunity to speak. Maybe give it one more minute and then we'll wrap up. All right. Well, I guess we're absorbing. It was a lot of amazing information, truly. So I will say thank you again for sharing this with us. I'm very glad that you were able to, put aside the efforts that it took to get this research undertaken. I think it would be really, really cool to see in other countries as well. And let me see if Christabel has anything more she'd like to say before we wrap.
No, I just want to thank you, Tansen, for such an interesting presentation, and thanks to all of you in the Nonfiction Special Interest Group for joining us from all the different parts of the world that you're calling in from.
Thank you. Thank you too, Christabel, for inviting me to present.
All right. Well, thanks again, everyone, and we'll be in touch by email, and we'll be looking forward to another year of getting, engaging you in our nonfiction work, our collective nonfiction work. All right, bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you all.
Thanks again, Jansen.
Thank you.